it would just be like First Take all over again because he's so used to.
It would be. And the truth is, Stephen A. Smith could have, and he's actually said this outright, he could have been a lawyer. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgasen, and this is another episode of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow us follow the Empty the Bench Network on social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. You can follow Nick at Nick Morgasen at NMorgasen Radio. You can follow the Empty the Bench. You can follow you can follow the Moving the Goalposts podcast across social media at MTGPETB. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on etbpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. And this show, Moving the Goalposts, is presented by Playback. Stay tuned to find out more. Okay, so a whole lot of NBA stuff today. NBA Western Conference, Warriors, they dropped to the play-in after a crazy finish against the Clippers. This is, this game really, obviously, it was a double overtime game. It could have gone either way. I was actually kind of surprised the Warriors ended up losing this game just because of the way the Warriors play. Like, no lead is safe against them. Like in the third quarter, you're up 20 against the Warriors. It's a little safer than it was 5-10 years ago, but it's just not safe. I was surprised the Warriors ended up losing this, but now they have to play a play-in game against the Grizzlies, and I think it'll be fine because Ja Morant is going to be getting some technicals for pretending to shoot a gun.
Or throwing grenades. But you know what? The play-in is intriguing in some aspects. Some games are just awful, and we'll get into all of them, but like, does anyone care about Atlanta or Orlando? No one cares.
The East and West are just so, this is a tale as old as time, but the East and West are so lopsided. I remember one time years ago, I did a podcast way before I was here, about the potential of the NBA merging the East and the West.
That's it. That's intriguing. That's for sure.
Well, Adam Silver was throwing it out there. It's not going to happen. I will say I like the West, even though I'm a Knick fan. And I'm from the East Coast. I like the West more than I like the East. Is how I would put it.
Well, when LeBron originally was in the East was obviously way more intriguing to deal with. The Eastern Conference, there was more competition in the East.
It depends on when. It depends on when, because even when LeBron was on the Cavs, I wouldn't say that was always true.
I'm talking about more on the Heat than the Cavs, but I think the East had way more competitive abilities when he was in the East. In the West, it's almost like he got lost in the West a little bit.
Yeah, well, he went West, and I was thinking, what was I going to say? I was thinking, I don't know if you believe this theory, but I think there's a little bit of truth to it. I think part of the reason so many players, like the East was so weak, a lot of it had to do with LeBron because everybody wanted to just not have to go up against LeBron.
I've heard that theory many times.
I think there's a little bit of truth to it.
Well, I also think when LeBron was in his prime, no one was beating him, even though his finals record is awful. If we all look back at it, and this
but is but the point is, he got to the finals a lot, which is what matters in this context. Because you're playing against your own conference to get to the finals. It doesn't matter if he loses.
No, I get that. That's the old BS sports talk topic of going back to LeBron and Jordan, who wins, or whatnot. But,
yeah. But it is interesting to me how, like, geography, this is general just observation. I think that geography so heavily correlates with team success. And, like, the NBA with the East and the West, like, all of our lives, the East has been significantly weaker than the West. And another thing I noticed is in football, teams that are in the South tend to be bad. It's always the Southern divisions that are like the weakest divisions.
Well, what is it? What is it? The NFC South forever would be a under 500 win in the division?
Or the AFC South many years. Like it always seems to be Southern teams, like South division teams in football that are bad.
But it's funny to me, just as we're going over these games, and people say, "Oh, well, Memphis should beat Golden State, no problem. And I'm like, hold the phone. I said, wait a minute. I think people are sleeping on Golden State a lot. Now, this is, like you said before, this is not the Warriors of 5 to 7 years ago where Steph was in his prime. They had Clay. They had Draymond in his prime. It's not the same team. And by the way, Draymond looked like he disappeared in the Sunday game. Just completely disappeared.
I mean, if he hits that layup, I think there's a good chance the Warriors end up winning.
Right, but I'm saying defensively, which is his premise, just totally folded.
Yeah.
But I think Golden State wins this game. I really do. Because do we really trust Memphis the way they are right now? They fired their head coach, which we'll get into all that later.
They're a team in complete disarray.
Yes, and I don't trust Ja Morant for anything right now whatsoever. If this guy would stop throwing grenades and worry about what's on the court, maybe he would actually be the player that everyone says he is. This is going to sound brash and bold, and a lot of people are not going to say it, but I don't really think he's an all-star. I don't. I think people give him far too much credit for what he's done. He's not on the court enough, by the way, either. He didn't play Sunday.
Yeah. Why didn't he play Sunday?
I think probably because they were in the playoffs already.
Okay,
but
so they didn't want to play him on purpose.
I know, but
that's not his fault. That's the team's decision.
I think they should have played him because he hasn't played very much all year.
I think they're better off not playing him because, wait, were they locked into a spot?
I don't know if they were 100% locked in, but they were pretty much into the play-in. It was more for seeding's sake, what most of Sunday was. But Ja's got to play. He doesn't have enough mileage on the legs this year between injuries and all that stuff. But
to me, it's just like I think he's really immature and he really has to grow up.
Oh, that's hitting the nail on the head, 100%. The guy.
How many times does he have to be told to? How many times does he have to be punished for him to just stop?
Because, well, I'll tell you why. Because so the NBA fined him $75,000. Does he really care about $75,000? No, he doesn't.
No, but the money. No, he doesn't. However, the money still adds up to a lot more money if you keep getting fined $75,000 over and over again. And even if you're wealthy like he is, you have to remember professional athletes don't always stay rich their whole lives. I mean, look at Delonte West, what happened to him. So he should have the wherewithal to be like, you know what? I don't want to keep losing money like this.
Okay,
and
but
he knows he can't do this. But it's not just his own money; it's his team.
No, I agree. But at the same time, I'm not making excuses for him. But he's 25 years old. He's very immature, like you said. Most kids at 25 years old don't know how to behave properly, which is a scary thing to say. But
I guess there's a little bit of truth to it. However, I think they're a little bit more mature than 17-year-olds. Like what Ja Morant's doing, I expect from like a 17-year-old. Like not a 25-year-old. And I don't even expect that from a college player. Like imagine
they're doing it in college though now because of him.
I mean a little bit, but not to the degree that he is. I mean, like he's got to I don't know what it is with him and just weapons. But he's just is so odd. Not just weapons, like pretending to shoot weapons. It is the oddest thing.
Well, the other thing is, and I'm sure you talked about it, and I talked about it when that whole situation with him came up. Like the guy's got to realize, okay, I stupidly did an Instagram live video of myself brandishing a gun in a strip club. Maybe I should stop doing these things because the NBA now has a bullseye, no pun intended, on my back, and maybe I should stop doing these things, but no. And
the question, the question I have is with the gun at the strip club is that's got to be a little bit of a hazard. Like,
yes,
you're getting a lap dance.
Well, it wasn't even that though. But it wasn't even that though. He literally was brandishing it, like holding it, like moving it in his hand on an Instagram live. And by the way, of all places to do a video, Instagram live. I mean, that was a very odd choice of...
Nothing good happens with Instagram Live. I mean, Shannon Sharp went on Instagram Live, and it was an accident.
Well...
Allegedly. I mean, I think it was. I think that Shannon Sharp seems like somebody who is very technologically challenged.
But Ja came out, and I don't remember the quotes off the top of my head 100%, but he basically said, like, oh, I'm the villain. and they're just going after me. No, you're wrong, Ja. You're so wrong in this. You're doing this. This is all self-inflicted wounds, as they say.
Yeah.
And you're going to screw your team. You're going to screw over the league because the league thinks you're a top, 10 star in the NBA, and they're going off of him because they brand their stars.
At least arguably.
I don't think he's a top 10 star, but that's just me.
I would say he's probably not a top 10 player, but he's still one of the more recognizable players.
By name, yes, but by
and also, I mean, the NBA, not so much anymore, but maybe like 20, 25 years ago, has had an image problem with their players being criminals. The perception of, I think it's very exaggerated, but based on the perception that their players are a bunch of thugs. And Ja Morant, and so the NBA still has a lot of PTSD with that, and Ja Morant really isn't helping with that perception.
Well, you go all the way back to Dennis Rodman if you want for that type of reputation with the NBA. I mean, this guy,
it was more of an early 2000s type of thing, but yes, it was a little bit of a thing in the 90s, and now then it kind of went away, and now, but like Ja Morant, the point is Ja Morant is not helping with that perception, and all the leagues are like this. Like, you can't be shooting guns as
the NFL too, big time. Like,
the NFL is actually far worse with it. And the reason all of the leagues have something in common with it is because it's bad television. It's bad for their brand. They want
kids too.
Children are watching, and it's just bad branding. I have no issue with Ja Morant owning a gun or walking around carrying a gun because he lives in Tennessee. That's allowed.
No, I get that, but you have security. You have team security. Do you really need to be walking around with guns?
Yeah, I don't know how much athletes walk around with security. I don't take issue with him. The point is, I don't take issue with him walking around with a gun. I have an issue with the constant celebrations with guns when he knows that he shouldn't be doing this, when he's constantly getting punished for it. Well, it goes to show you he's just immature.
And on top of it, saying that the NBA is making him the bad guy. No, Ja, you're doing it to yourself.
Well, I feel like every athlete, not just athlete, but like public figures who develop reputations, they think that they didn't earn that reputation. And I suppose it's possible for that to happen. But what Ja Morant's doing, it seems very similar to what Angel Reese has said. Like, they claim that the public made her a villain, but she made herself a villain. She marketed herself as a villain.
She went after Caitlin Clark when they were both in college. It started all the way back when they were competing in March Madness. She
couldn't have done anything more to make herself a villain than she did.
And you did the John Cena thing in front of her face. Come on.
And it was way worse than that, and pointing to the ring finger and things like that. The game was over, and it's like, all right, fine. Do all of that, but don't be mad when people think you're a villain because you're trying to paint yourself as a villain.
Right. But to kind of get us back on track, the game is interesting. We're going to be watching most of them on Playback. We're going to watch all the games, but no one really cares about Atlanta or Orlando. That game will go by. But Memphis Golden State has a lot of headlines. I think Golden State is going to win. The line is big. But I would take Golden State. Jimmy Butler's the difference by far. You and I were discussing this beforehand. That, what'd you say? It was 23-7 overall with him since he's been on the team.
23-7. So that is roughly. I think that's above. I think that's like a 76%. I did the math. I think that's like a.
It's like 80.
That's a 77% win percentage.
It's close to 80%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a 77% winning percentage, and that is better. That is a better winning percentage than every team in the West other than Oklahoma City. So with Jimmy Butler by percentage, they are the second best team in the West.
Yeah, because that role is perfect for him where he is right now. He's a 2 scorer, not a number 1 scorer. Steph Curry puts up all the shots or assists, and then Jimmy could fit in as a role player, and he's not pressured every day, and the spotlight is not on him like it was in Miami. So
yeah, and also his skill set complements the Warriors' skill set very well.
Yes, because he can play defense, he can fit in and score where he needs to be. I don't see how Golden State doesn't win this game, to be honest.
Yeah, look, I feel pretty sure of it. They're 6.5-point favorites. They're very big favorites. Um, I haven't looked at the lines in all these games, but I would venture to guess that the Warriors are the biggest favorite.
I have all four of them here
What
currently
are
as
they?
we record. So currently, Golden State is a 6.5 favorite. Orlando's a 5.5 favorite. That's for the first, and then let's see, Chicago's a 1.5 favorite over Miami. That game's kind of a crapshoot. And Dallas, Sacramento. Sacramento is a 4.5 favorite over Dallas. First of all, Dallas should not even be in this position whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it's because they traded Luka.
No, but I'm just saying generally with all the injuries and everything, they're a walking injury, like a walking hospital, and somehow they got in.
Well, that's because they didn't get in yet. They have to win the play-in game.
No, but I'm saying like just to get into the play-in tournament. I'm saying they're a walking hospital. They've no bodies.
But like, had they not traded Luka, there's a good chance they wouldn't have to play a play-in game.
By the way, that atmosphere was incredible in Dallas when the Lakers went down there.
Yeah, and you mean when and that was when Luka Doncic
put up 45,
made his return to Dallas, and he got a very warm welcome, and he cried.
Yeah, and he put up 45 points. I mean,
yeah, and the thing is, I don't even think it was meant as like a fuck you to the fans or anything like that. More, if anything, to Nico Harrison.
Well,
and the front office.
You heard the FU Nico Harrison chats during the game, right?
I did.
I mean, this guy's going to be universally hated for the rest of the time.
I don't know what it is with the name Nico, but there's two different Nicos right now that are really just killing their reputations.
Yeah, really. I mean, but just overall, generally, when I look at the play-in tournament, it'll probably be Golden State. I don't know. The Miami-Chicago one is interesting. I'd probably take Miami. Probably just because I think they're the better team, even without Jimmy Butler. I would venture maybe Sacramento would probably beat Dallas just because of the injuries. But if Sacramento lost, I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, that's kind of how I see the play-in tournament playing out.
Well, I generally agree. I think that I feel much. I am far less. I think the least interesting game is the Bulls Heat game because they essentially made it because nobody else could. I mean, they both have losing records and they ended up making now they have a shot at making the playoffs.
Well, that's the East for you in a nutshell. Like the bottom 6-7 teams are 500 or worse.
I mean, I don't think either of them are going to beat, which I think would be Atlanta I think Orlando is going to end up beating them. But, even if Orlando loses, I don't think either of them are going to end up beating Orlando. No. I would say I generally agree with that assessment.
Yeah. I mean, Dallas should not even be anywhere near the playoffs. That's just the way I look at it. Would I be surprised if Memphis won? No, I wouldn't be surprised. But I just don't see them going far because of
I'd be surprised. I don't agree. I'd be surprised.
Because their head coaching situation's a mess. They don't have any strategy going into the playoffs. So if they win this game, okay, fine. They beat an older Golden State, but that's the only reason.
Well, I mean, it really just tells me that there is just a whole lot of shenanigans going on behind the scenes with the Grizzlies because nobody fires their head coach at that point in the season unless there's a whole bunch of shenanigans going on because who thinks that that's going to help them win?
Well, Denver did it too, but...
Yeah, exactly. Both of them do, and Denver even more so.
And Denver, it's worse because they're already into the playoffs. Like by far.
Yeah, Memphis, they might not even make the playoffs technically, but yeah, it's similar situations, and it tells me that they're just a team in complete disarray. Not to mention the fact that the Warriors are just way better than a 6 seed based on how they're playing right now.
Yeah,
they're way better than a 6 seed.
Yeah, I mean Jimmy Butler's going to carry them, so we'll see how far that goes.
Well, they're not going to. Jimmy Butler's not going to carry them. Steph Curry is still the best player.
No, but I'm saying they're going to go as far as Jimmy Butler wants to play and be there. I feel like.
Well, think about it for a second. Like I just said, with Jimmy Butler, they have the second best win percentage in the West. The funny thing about the West is that it's more like the lower seeded teams that I'm the most confident in winning.
I don't know if they'll win the title, but.
No. I mean, like coming out of the West, like there's a really good chance the Warriors end up coming out of the West. The only problem is that they're at a disadvantage because they have to win the play-in game, and they're going to have to, and they're not going to have home court in a whole bunch of. I mean, I understand it's a 7-game series, but that could make a difference. But I mean, to me, when I look at the West, at the dynamics of the West, I think that I'm most confident in Oklahoma City, the Warriors, and the Lakers. That's the teams I'm most confident in. Maybe I would have said Denver 2 weeks ago, but ever since they ended up firing Mike Malone, I don't have much confidence in them anymore. But to me, right now, I think the Lakers, the Warriors, and Oklahoma City are the most dangerous teams in just slightly different ways.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously when you look at the play-ins, Bulls, Heat, Magic, Hawks, that winner will eventually play the Celtics. No one's beating the Celtics, so those games are basically moot until they get to the Celtics.
Those particular teams are not beating the Celtics.
And then on the other side of it, like you have to play the Cavs, who are the 1 seed.
Yeah.
No one's. First of all, I think we're on a collision course for Cavs Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think.
I mean, I don't know what the odds are. I don't know if you can bet on the odds of what the matchup is going to be, but that's got to be like.
I think you can actually. I think you can say what the conference matchup is, but just
that's what I would bet on.
Yeah. I don't expect much. I don't expect any of the play-in teams to be left after they get to the 1 and 2 seed. I just don't.
Not in the East. The East
No.
is just too weak.
On the West, I mean, I know you said you're confident in the Thunder. I'm not 100% confident in the Thunder.
Well, I'm not 100% confident in Oklahoma City. I think they're one of the teams that you got to put on the list as some of the best ones. I mean,
yes, I'm not debating that, but
I mean, they have SGA, who's a top 5 player.
He's the MVP, probably.
Yeah, they went 68-14. So they're only like 5 games short of like the Warriors in 2016.
Yeah,
so,
but just remember one thing, that they were the 1 seed last year and they got upset. So
what was their record last year?
I have to look it up. I don't remember.
It wasn't like this. Like they weren't far and away the best team in the regular season like this. And I'm not saying that means they're going to come out and be the best team in the playoffs. But there's that does tell you a lot, is the point I'm making.
Yeah, I'm looking up the Thunder record
but I think they won like 60 games last year. I could be wrong.
I think you're right. It was close to 60 because they were the 1 seed last year too. So I'm not buying it 100% yet. Don't get me wrong. This team is way better this year than it was last year. They had some injuries last year. They were not as experienced last year. The experience killed them last year. Now,
and now they have an extra year of experience, which actually makes a very big difference.
I mean, I'm just looking at who they could potentially play. So I guess I don't know, who would they potentially play. So it's probably either going to be the Warriors or the Grizzlies. Probably.
Yeah.
I'd be intrigued to see a Warriors Thunder series. I think that would be intriguing.
Oh, by the way, if you want to talk about age and experience, now I understand age and experience are not exactly the same thing,
right?
But I'm looking at the NBA teams by age, order of average age, and Oklahoma City is the second youngest on average behind the Trailblazers.
I don't think that's a bad thing in this scenario because, again, they got an experience as a 1 seed last year, so that'll probably help them this time around. But if you put like a Warriors against the Thunder, that could be an intriguing upset, 1-8, possibly, if that's how it played out. But I don't know.
Well, the Warriors... The Warriors would not be the 8 seed.
Not 8 seed.
So they probably end up being the 7 seed.
All right. So then they would end up playing the Rockets. They would end up
Memphis.
Right. So the Warriors are a 7 seed technically. So they would play the Rockets if they won. Okay. And then either the Kings or the Mavs would play the Thunder.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is the reason I don't disagree. Like, I think they don't have the experience that, say, the Lakers and the Warriors have, and not as franchises, but just as players. I mean, they have Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and then with the Lakers, you have LeBron and then Luka Doncic, who have way more playoff. Especially guys like LeBron and Steph Curry. Way more playoff experience than anybody on Oklahoma City.
I mean, since we're talking about the other matchups, just look at the other ones. Nuggets, Clippers, very intriguing series. I think that series is a lot closer than people realize, especially now that Michael Malone is out and the GM is out. Everyone's saying the Clippers are going to run away with it. I don't believe that at all.
Well, you also have to remember James Harden has, even though he's had a great year, James Harden has a reputation for being terrible in the playoffs. I mean, he never, like, James Harden has never gotten it together in the playoffs.
And people are saying, "Oh, Kawhi's angry and he's going to play good in the playoffs." What does that mean? Can
I mean,
someone tell me what that means?
that might be true, but every time I hear that prediction, it never comes true. Not
But
about Kawhi specifically, but whenever I hear that argument, it never comes
but
true.
I'm saying I don't get when people say, "Oh, you're going to get there's an angry Kawhi heading into the play." That doesn't mean anything to me at all.
Here's the thing, though. I trust Kawhi in a big playoff spot a lot more than James Harden.
Oh
And
yeah, that's a fact.
and
Yeah.
then here's the thing. I think James Harden is a great player. He's one of the best offensive players I've ever seen. The problem is he's just one of those guys similar to Jimmy Butler where you just can't win with him as your number one guy. Like when he was on the Rockets, he was the number one guy on the Rockets. And they were never able they were just they always ended up floundering in the playoffs. Whereas I think you can with Kawhi Leonard.
Right.
Maybe not anymore. Maybe. But maybe you still can.
I want to see Kawhi actually play a full series. That's where I'm not buying it.
I mean, I miss the old Kawhi. The
You mean
Spurs Kawhi, you
the
know?
Spurs Kawhi who would literally go full out for everything. Even in Toronto, where he went full out.
Yeah, and he ended up winning them. He ended up winning them the finals, and then got up and left.
Right. No, I get that. And just look at that series. I think I could see this series going 7 games. The Nuggets Clippers series. Um, I don't know. I still have some faith in the Nuggets, even with their coaching staff being a disaster.
Yeah,
But I think it'll go 6-7 games.
I do too. I mean, look, they're still a good team. Either way, they're still a very good team. It's just that there's just a whole bunch of shenanigans going on behind the scenes.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, but just looking at some of the other series quickly. You
Yeah,
mentioned you mentioned Lakers Timberwolves. You're right. That is very, very interesting.
That is the most interesting series because I think either of these teams would be up there with the Celtics and the Cavs if they were in the East. So, like, it would look like I think that what happens to either of these teams, like, it would look like a first round exit when really both of these teams are better than most first round exit teams.
In my opinion, the Lakers are not a 3 seed. That's just my opinion of the matter.
You think they're worse than a 3 seed?
Yeah.
No way.
Yes. Yeah, because first of all, with all the situations they've had to deal with all year, LeBron is even though he's been great, and I'm the biggest LeBron hater there is on the planet, but I had to give him credit.
There's a couple of that. There's a few that are bigger.
But I give him credit because, again, what did he average? Like 28 points for the year as a 40-year-old? I mean, this guy's an incredible specimen. But
I think it was a little lower. What is the Lakers' record? Wait, you know what? I can look this up.
But I'll finish by the point by saying the Timberwolves are a great team. They really should win this series. I think technically they're the better team. But Anthony Edwards, excuse me, has not really proven that he can be a playoff bound star. And that kind of bothers me. And I don't know if you saw he made headlines over the last week or two also.
Well, I mean, look, Anthony Edwards is my favorite, I would say my favorite young player right now. And yeah, I saw the technical got reversed.
Which, by the way, I don't agree with.
I agree with it completely.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, because what was that technical for? Unless I missed something. Like I said that I thought it should have been reversed because it shouldn't have been called a technical in the first place. That is why I said that unless there is something that he said to the ref, like he called him something derogatory or something like that, it didn't seem like that happened. It seemed like he just argued very mildly with the ref, and the ref kind of had it out for him.
Here's the issue I have. It's not the technical or not. It's that the NBA basically said he's a star and we're removing the technical away so he can play on Sunday. That's the problem I have.
Well, right, but you're assuming that you're assuming that motive when the NBA does things like this all the time where they reverse calls or at least admit they were wrong.
You
I mean,
really
like,
think they were going to let him miss Sunday?
well, first of all, I don't even think it mattered that much if he played. I mean, if he played on Sunday, given that they were playing Utah and they were probably going to win with or without him
Well,
anyway.
it did have to do with seeding, but
It did have to do with seeding. But the point is that, okay, the point I'm making is you're saying you're assigning this motive essentially to the NBA, saying that that's the motive. However, what I'm also saying is that they did the right thing I think they should have done that regardless. And I'm not saying they necessarily would have, but the NBA has a history of reversing technicals and reversing flagrants and doing things like that all the time.
well, in my opinion, that's not trusting the referees then that you have.
But don't you think I agree, but don't you think that it's better for them to make corrections and acknowledge that the refs can be wrong sometimes? They're humans.
Yes, I'll tell you, for instance, like when Luca got that technical for screaming at the fan, but the refs assumed it was at them, so they gave him they ejected him from the game with his second technical. That one, I think they got wrong. 100%, they got wrong but part of that is because Luca has a horrible reputation of screaming at refs. So whenever they see Luca screaming at the sky, they're going to assume it's him screaming at a ref.
I understand that. I don't disagree. However, they should still get it right. Even if a player has a reputation, I still think they should get it right. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to the player, even if they have a reputation of doing something over and over again.
Yeah, my real issue is I wish they would get rid of this stupid technical rule during the regular season. I don't think there should be a number of technicals get you suspended a game.
Right. But here's the thing. The thing is, though, it's I think the refs had it out for Anthony Edwards. I think that which, by the way, Tim Donaghy, which the NBA has a bit of a reputation for.
Well, Tim Donaghy. Yeah.
Tim Donaghy talked about it in his book. Now, I don't know how trustworthy he is, although I do tend to believe it. Like what happened with Iverson, that they called his carries when they normally didn't call his carries and things like that.
I believe that, though, because of gambling. Yeah.
Right. But a similar thing happened. But the story that he was telling was different. It was that the refs had it out for.
Of course they did.
Allen Iverson.
Refs had it out for certain players. It's obvious.
Right. But the point I'm making is the refs had it out for Anthony Edwards. That's what I think.
I don't know about that.
Did you see the play? It was a very questionable foul call. Anthony Edwards responds by saying, "How is that a foul?" And that's what it looks like he said. And then he gets teed up for that.
But the problem is the way the rules are, and this is on the NBA, what I'm about to say, that they have rules where you're not supposed to argue the fouls. It's the same thing in Major League Baseball. What's the rule when something happens? You're not allowed to argue balls and strikes. You're supposed to be automatically ejected if you argue balls and strikes. No, that's the rule. Look it up. I mean,
okay, but how many players get automatically ejected?
I'm not saying they should.
Argue?
I'm not saying they should. I'm just pointing out that it's kind of a mechanism by referees and umpires that they're told, hey, as soon as they argue, you get a tech. That's more of where I'm getting at.
Except you're not governed by what the rules are in words on paper. You're governed by effectively how they actually enforce it. So I'll give you an analogy. The speed limit on a lot of highways is 55. That's the posted speed limit. And if you commit some other traffic violation and the cop stops you and you're going 65, the cop will add that onto it and be like, oh, you're going 65. This is a 55. But in reality, the effective speed limit is 70, 75. The cop doesn't really stop you unless you go above 70 or 75. Well, the real speed limit is 70 or 75. It's the same thing in professional sports where it's all right, you're not allowed to argue with the refs, but you can. We all know LeBron argues with the refs all the time and never gets ejected.
Well, yes, there's certain leeway for certain players because they're bigger names or they're bigger stars. I mean, just to go back to the speed analogy, usually they say you can go 5 below or 5 above the speed limit usually, and they let you go if you do that.
On most highways, you can go 15 or 20 over, and the cop is not going to stop you.
It also depends how many cars there are and all that stuff. But the point is, it all depends on who you are and if you're a star or not. But the Timberwolves should win that series, but because the Lakers have Luka and LeBron, they're going to win that series, I think. And
I think so too. I think that LeBron has just had an amazing year, especially for a 40-year-old, and pairing him up with Luka, it just makes their offense unstoppable.
yeah, I agree with you. I'll leave the one you want to do for last, but Pacers Bucks. This is a series that should be later on in the playoffs. This shouldn't be now. Like, this is a great series. Now, Milwaukee's not the same team they were a few years ago.
No.
And I keep forgetting the guy who they just traded to the Wizards because he was the second star on the Bucks. Because I don't know, his name keeps slipping my mind. But
the guy they traded to the Wizards?
I mean, yeah,
Kuzma?
no. He was a big scorer like Giannis, but I can't remember who it was. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he doesn't have a secondary scorer, really. Dame is out for the rest of the year with the blood clot, which, by the way, I'm now hearing reports that people are telling him to go to Miami. It's a little late for that now.
Wait, go to Miami for what?
Like, he should leave Milwaukee and go to Miami.
But, I think you meant Miami for like a blood clot because of the blood.
No. But no Dame. I don't think they win that series at all.
They still have Giannis though.
Okay, but you don't have a secondary guy to play off of.
Yeah, and the Pacers are no slouch.
Right. The Pacers are good to and this is a good transitional point as they took your Knicks to 7 games.
Well, that was last year. Well, they didn't take them to 7 games; they beat them.
I'm saying it went 7 games, but
if anything, the Knicks took them to 7 games.
It was a great series. But speaking of the Knicks,
the Knicks were severely injured at the time. Yeah, so playoff expectations for the Knicks, and this is amongst. So we just spent a half hour, 35 minutes actually talking about the West. So now we have to talk about the East. And the only team, I mean, there's not much to say about the East, honestly, other than that the Cavs and the Celtics are the top teams. And then the one right below that is the Knicks. And I think Boomer Esiason, I could be wrong, said that Tom Thibodeau could be on the hot seat if
that's crazy.
If the Knicks lose. First of all, the playoff expectations for the Knicks are fairly simple. If they lose to any team other than the Celtics or the Cavs, the season's a failure. Unless, of course, the reason is because of some crazy injuries that are insurmountable or something like that. But in general, if they lose to any team other than the Cavs or the Celtics, the season will be deemed a failure, how I would put it.
But I think that's tough because the Pistons, like, people are not talking about the Pistons at all. Like, last year, weren't they the worst team in the NBA? If I'm not mistaken, they had that ridiculous losing streak last year.
They were like the Chicago White Sox of the NBA.
Yes, and they've completely turned around. They're a 6th seed this year. Now, am I saying they're going to beat the Knicks? No, I'm not. But could I see this going 6 games? Yeah, I really could. Because sometimes the Knicks have a little bit of a tendency to play down to their competition a little bit. And
I think everybody does a little bit. I think if anything, they have more of a tendency to like blow big leads and not beat good teams is how I would put it.
I want to see how Cade plays in the playoffs, though. That's where I'm going to be intrigued to watch. If Cade Cunningham could come out and be the player that he can be, I could see this going 6 games and making it competitive. If he's a complete dud and he's bricking shots left and right, they might get swept. So,
I mean, I don't expect the Knicks to sweep them. If I were to take a guess, I would say the most likely outcome is the Knicks win in 6 games.
The Pistons will win at least 1 home game. I'll put that on the board, I think.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's usually how it works. I mean, look, there are 6-game series there are some series that go 6 games that are close, and there are some that are not. I remember when the Cavs played the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, the year that they ended up beating the Warriors. They ended up, the series went 6 games, but it didn't feel like 6 games. It felt a lot. It felt much more lopsided, whereas some 6-game series feel very close.
The problem is, I think this is unfortunately a dead end after this series, to be quite honest, though, because they're just not, because they would take the Celtics if they advanced. So I just don't see them beating the Celtics at all. Just that they're going to be completely outmatched.
Yeah. I'm looking at the average age, and I think the Pistons are like the 6th youngest team in the NBA.
they're a mix of like veterans and young players. That's what makes them a pretty good team because they can kind of mesh.
But here's the thing, though. They're a pretty good team. The Knicks are a level above the Pistons. And I'm not saying the Pistons are a bad team, and I'm not saying they would be like the first team to lose a series that they shouldn't lose. But, like, I mean, you have to understand. I mean, the Knicks have been head and shoulders above most of the teams in the East for most of the year, other than the Cavs and the Celtics. I would say head and shoulders because like injuries kind of got to them a little bit, but they're expected to beat every single one of those teams other than the top two.
The thing I worry about is Jalen Brunson being healthy. That's one thing I'd be worried about because he missed like a little over a month heading into the playoffs, and they need him. They need him in the worst way if they're going.
Look, their record would be much better if Jalen Brunson hadn't gotten injured.
No, I agreed, but I'm saying they need him if they're going to make a run in the playoffs. Here's the
thing, though. For everybody talking about Thibodeau, it's just like Thibodeau is the best Knicks head coach of my lifetime.
You're talking about record-wise, right?
Well, just in any way. I mean, like, what head coach in the past 20 years for the Knicks has been better than Tom Thibodeau? I mean, it might not be saying much because, like, the Knicks aren't known for hiring the best head coaches, but I mean, like, the last Knicks head coach that I thought was legitimately a good head coach was probably Mike D'Antoni.
That's what I was going to say.
But I would take Thibodeau over D'Antoni.
Yeah, I agree with it.
That's my personal opinion.
I mean, Thibodeau is more of a defensive-minded coach, but
yeah, which oddly enough, the Knicks defense is so bad, and I think the Knicks are struggling so much on defense because of losing Hartenstein killed them.
Well, first of all, you're not going to pay Hartenstein $90 million, so
they weren't even allowed to match the Thunder's offer.
Well, first of all, they had the rights, so they could have matched whatever deal.
No, that's not how it worked.
I thought that didn't they have the rights?
No. My understanding is that no. The Knicks were not allowed to match the offer, but even if they could, they wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been worth it.
No, I'm saying it's not worth the money. I mean, he's playing well in OKC, but
they were not able to match the offer. It was something to do.
Maybe it was cap issues, maybe.
No, it was I'm not exactly sure what the rule is, but like something to do with like the Players Association where they were not allowed to match it.
Of course. But I don't know. This is going to be a good playoffs, though. And if we get an upset or two, that might make it better. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Well, yeah, we're going to need because we didn't have enough in March Madness.
Oh my God!
So that was the real talk. I mean, look. I look forward to the NBA playoffs. I do very much enjoy the NBA playoffs. I would say the only thing I would say is I think the first round should be 5 games instead of a 7-game series. I think 7 games is too much.
I think the NBA playoffs takes too long sometimes. Also, to be quite honest.
I mean, like sometimes I think in sports less is more, but the leagues just don't go by that. They don't think that could be a thing. Moving the goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. Speaking of Tom Thibodeau potentially being on the hot seat, the Suns fired Mike Budenholzer. Is there any other head coach that gets raw deals like Mike Budenholzer? I mean, he got fired 2 years after he won the NBA Finals
with the Bucks. Yeah.
And then gets fired after 1 season with the Suns.
I don't blame him for this one, to be honest. Like, I saw reports that apparently he's difficult to work with, but who isn't difficult to work with in the NBA? I blame
also, who's putting out these reports? What do they know?
No, it was actually one of the Suns insiders. But in my opinion, the big, if you want to call it the big 3 that exist in Phoenix, Kevin Durant's a head case. Devin Booker cannot be a leader whatsoever. And Bradley Beal, who gives a shit about Bradley Beal because he can't do anything. So This big three was a disaster from the
I mean,
start.
look, if Bradley Beal's a part of your big three, are you even really a big three?
No, of course not. Bradley Beal, and by the way, the Suns gave in by, I think, giving him a no trade. So now he basically controls the narrative of where he wants to go because they've been trying to trade him forever. They tried up until the trade deadline. And Bradley Beal kept saying, no, don't want to go there. And by the way, and I've said this, you've heard me say this, and I'm a broken record when I say it. The three of them cost $150 million. That's the cap number.
Yeah.
Is that insane that the three of them make the cap number? Everybody else on the roster is costing them extra penalty money on top of it.
Yeah.
And Matt Ishbia, who bought the team from, who was the guy again? I don't even remember. Who, the disgruntled owner of the Suns, who got in trouble.
Oh, because he said something racist, I think.
Yes, I think.
I forget his name.
But he's trying to do all this digital stuff. He doesn't want to put the Suns on TV anymore. And all.
I mean, look, I don't know about any of that, but
I'm telling you the background a little bit. But
yeah,
Ishbia said at the beginning of the season, "Oh, we're going to make a championship run." Oops, as an 11 seed. But I can't blame them.
Part of it is that they're just unlucky that they play in the West. In the East, they'd at least be a playoff team.
But everyone is trying to blame this on Budenholzer. Absolutely not. Sorry, that excuse is not going to fly.
Well, like I said on the last show, it seems like NBA coaches are becoming like college football coaches, where they end up getting fired. Like they end up being held to such unrealistic expectations. Like Budenholzer gets fired 2 years after winning the NBA Finals. Ed Ogeron got fired from LSU 2 years after he won the national championship. Like, to me, it just seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
Mike Malone,
Malone's firing was one of the most shocking things I ever saw this year because Malone had the best tenure stretch in Denver Nuggets history for winning games, and you fire the guy knowing that you're going to be a third or a fourth seed heading into the playoffs. Are you kidding?
Yeah, like it's just becoming a thing in the NBA where it just seems like a lot of it is player driven, or at least not all of it is necessarily player driven. I think some of it is just fighting in the front office.
Yeah, but you made a good point. I don't remember where I heard you say it, but for Jokic being a quiet player.
Yeah.
And I listened to that and I said, yeah, that's 100% right. The guy is a quiet player. I don't think first of all, I think he actually liked Malone, actually.
He probably did. I mean, like, I don't think that like Liam was saying on the show, is there any way they did this without consulting Jokic?
No.
And I would say no, but that doesn't mean that he pushed for him to get fired.
I think Jokic doesn't like getting into the drama aspect, and that's why people are confused because he's a star. He's supposed to be hiring and firing the coach, and maybe that's not the case, though.
But like, I don't think he said. Like, I don't think Jokic called the front office and said,
No.
"Look, I want Mike Malone fired." They probably consulted him with it, but it's like he doesn't. Jokic doesn't show emotion. Like.
Right.
After he won the NBA Finals, I'm sure he was elated with joy, but like he didn't show it. He's just one of those people that just doesn't show emotion.
You know what happened after he won the title? He went back to I forgot where he's from. But he went back to Serbia. He went back to Serbia and he went and tenured to his horses because that's what he likes doing.
Like the thing is, just because he doesn't show emotion doesn't mean he doesn't feel it. Like I don't necessarily
during games he will. We've seen it.
Yeah.
But
in the heat of the moment.
But emotions of game action are different than emotions behind the scenes. I mean,
right. We don't know.
But
we don't really know.
The amount of firings we've seen right before the playoffs is shocking. Like just the amount.
Yeah, and like these are playoff teams also. Like not in the Suns case, but like in Denver's case. Yeah, and Memphis's case. These are I mean, not only the Nuggets, they're a 4 seed.
Yeah, I mean,
they're one of the better playoff teams.
Jenkins, I'm not sure if he'll get a job again, but Malone will definitely get a job again because he's a really good head coach. So he'll end up somewhere. I'd be happy if my Nets would throw their hat in the ring for Malone. Just saying, but I don't think that's going to happen.
By the way, I love how the Knicks beat the Nets yesterday with basically a B team roster.
Well, did you see that they pulled who had the game streak for the Knicks?
Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, let me just go in for
6
5
seconds.
seconds. And now foul and get out. First of all, that
Yeah.
should not be allowed, in my opinion.
Well,
But
why not? Who cares? It was a meaningless game anyway.
so stupid, though. Like,
But it's not stupid. You want your streak to continue. And there was no point in him playing because they were locked into the 3 seed anyway. So it didn't matter if they ended up. The Knicks didn't care. That's the point. They didn't. I mean, the players cared that were in the game, but they didn't like Tom Thibodeau, obviously.
the only dumb headline I saw out of Sunday's games was that Bronny got a start for the Lakers. That was it.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I didn't even see his score line, to be honest. So I didn't pay attention. But
so yeah, the point is, I think the West is just a really interesting conference this year. I really really like I can't wait to see what the Lakers and the Warriors can do. Even though they're older team, even though LeBron is older, I think he could still have some amazing performances. And I think this year's Lakers team is way better than last year's Lakers team.
no, I agree.
Way better.
That's a fact.
And with Oklahoma City, we're just yet to see how much better they are this year than they were last year.
That's true. We'll have to wait and find out.
I do want to get into some football stuff.
Yeah.
Very sad news. Kyren Lacy passed away of an apparent suicide. And
yeah, this is nuts.
The circumstances to me make it kind of obvious that this was a suicide.
Oh, no. The reports are that it was clearly a suicide. He was in Houston, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Also, he was in a hotel room. I heard that too. But his father put out a Facebook post, a little bit cryptic, basically saying, make sure you check your kid for mental health. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that's a weird post to put out after the fact. But
this was not so much. I mean, I guess it did have something to do with mental health too, probably. But it was more the circumstances of there was a warrant out for his arrest for vehicular homicide. He was driving really fast, but in this case, he didn't it wasn't a hit and run. It was a miss and run, which is what happened. So basically, and some of this could be a little bit of a gray area. When it comes to vehicular homicide, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've actually experienced situations of miss and runs. I remember one time I was driving on the West Side Highway, and what happened was there was a red light, and I was trying to make you know how on the West Side Highway you can make a U-turn to go in the other direction, and there was a guy who would have ran the red light if there wasn't a whole bunch of traffic, because that would have been a sure accident. But he was ready to run the red light and skip the whole line, and I was at the front, and he ended up. I was like, I'm not letting this guy go. So as I was turning, he didn't stop and kept turning. So what happened was I ended up scraping my door on the side of
wow.
that area that divides the two sides.
Yeah.
So I ended up scraping my whole door, and he didn't hit me, but he caused me to basically mess up my whole door.
Yeah, that's not a surprise.
That's a very clear example. It was a similar thing with Kyren Lacy, where he was driving really, really fast and recklessly, and he caused another car to okay. So
was it a chain reaction, so to speak? Kind of.
Yeah. So basically, he was driving behind a car whose driver swerved left to avoid his car, and that caused an accident.
Oh, jeez.
So which ended up killing somebody.
Ugh.
So he ended up killing himself to avoid to avoid getting arrested and ruining his life potentially. I mean, it is worth noting, I think if he hadn't killed himself, he would have played in the NFL anyway. He would have been another Jalen Carter.
Zan told me that he was going to be a late first rounder.
I mean, he was one of the best wide receivers in college football last year.
Because when I saw this name, I said, wow, this name looks really familiar when I saw the headline.
He's a star player.
Right. And I said, oh my God. And then I saw the headline and I'm like, whoa. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah. It's just really, really sad. I was really shocked when I saw this news. But yeah, it was very clearly a suicide. It does make me think of Henry Ruggs a little, and you brought it up to me.
I was going to say, you beat me to it on the actual show, but yes, now that situation was way worse because I think he was DUI. I think also, right? So I
And he
don't
was going 100 miles an hour.
actually I think it was like 120, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
120. It was even worse than that.
And this all goes back to even college athletes now. You don't think that they have transportation for these guys to get around? They do.
They can, I mean, look, the NFL, I know for a fact, I know in the NFL,
They have a service.
they have a service where they give you a free like limousine, like the nicest possible form of transportation to get from point A to point B in case you've been drinking. And Henry Ruggs still ended up driving.
This is
And
like a
it's
nice
not,
sports car that he destroyed too.
but with Ruggs, it wasn't just the drinking and driving. It's also the fact that he was going over 100
Well,
miles an hour.
he crashed into a car, if I'm not mistaken, with a woman and her dog in it,
Yeah, and
and it
killed them
exploded.
instantly.
It exploded. The car exploded that he hit. Like,
Yeah,
first of all, I have no sympathy for Ruggs still to this day at all. Like,
right.
play stupid games, win stupid prizes, as I say all the time. I don't know. I don't know 100% the whole thing about Kyren Lacy, but like when you do something like that, there's something wrong there.
But what I would say is that, like, I think the saying is like, a fool learns from his own mistakes, and a
Yes.
smart person learns from somebody else's mistakes.
Yes.
I mean, like, what I would say to all these star players is learn from other players' mistakes.
Don't make the same ones.
Don't do the same things that so many other guys have done.
Yeah. No, I agree with that for sure.
I mean, in this case, he wasn't drinking; he was just driving recklessly.
Yeah. No, it's a bad situation.
So some more college football news. Nico lamaleava and Tennessee are parting ways because Nico wanted $4 million instead of $2.4 million from the NIL fund. I mean, forget like the whole concept of the policy of NIL because that's to me is a little bit secondary. And apparently his dad, Nico lamaleava's dad, was heavily involved in this. Which doesn't surprise me. He's like 20 years old, so it makes sense for his dad to be heavily involved in this. But I will
This is
say,
crazy though.
I don't think your dad should be effectively an agent for you when, I mean, I don't know what kind of year he thought he had. Nico lamaleava didn't have a good year last year.
He did not. He had a terrible year.
He was a big talk of the town, but he put up really big numbers in the first 3 non-conference games, but that was it. Like, against SEC teams in the playoffs, he was terrible. What makes him think he's worth more than what he already got?
Well, the issue you run into, and I said it to you beforehand, was that the NIL situation is a free-for-all. But we knew that already, but it's a complete free-for-all. Oh, I don't like the money I'm making. I'm just going to go sit out of the spring game until I get the money I want. Effectively, a professional sports holdout is what he was doing. And so, I don't like my $2.5 million. I want $4 million. You think schools are just going to bend over backwards to give you another $1.5 million? No.
Well, but like, don't you think that the schools not giving them the money is a little bit more of almost like not a hedge against it, but just sort of like almost like a force against it in a sense, like a marketplace force? Because if you look at like professional sports, whenever the players end up holding out, whenever players hold out, it's because they know they can actually hold out and get the money that the team that they want, which always ends up happening. It usually just takes a little bit of time. Whereas in this case, it's like the team was just like, see ya. Tennessee was just like, see, and by the way, he can go somewhere else, and it's probably going to be a smaller school than Tennessee, and not as good, and probably less likely to be like a playoff team. And the party that loses out more is Nico, and not Tennessee.
No, I get that, but at the same time, I think that these guys, or the schools, excuse me, should say, well, we already gave you $2.5 million. Stop being greedy and asking for more money. You already signed your deal. Just play it out. And at the end of the season, if you want to renegotiate or discuss it, fine. But I think it's wrong, by the way. Like, if you agree to a deal, like, because usually I think the deals are 4 years when they agree to these NIL deals. Honor your deal. But at the same time, I understand because coaches do it all the time where they jump ship. I think on both sides of the coin, the coaches should have to follow rules and the NILs should have to follow rules.
The problem with the previous system is that coaches were able to get up and leave anytime they wanted and the players couldn't. I think the players and the coaches should be held to the same standard.
Right. No. I get that. But I'm just saying, like, there needs to be no chaos when it comes to these rules.
I mean, I think the biggest problem with NIL is that, not NIL, the transfer portal is that it like starts while the postseason is still going. So it started during March Madness.
No, I agree with you. The transfer portal news is stupid. I mean, the timing of it is stupid, but
yeah, I'm for the transfer portal, but the timing of it is just ridiculous, and players are almost forced.
There were teams that were still in the tournament who were making signings out of the transfer portal.
There were players sitting out whose teams were in the tournament because they had to go to the transfer portal. I mean, in college football, in football, it happened too.
You know what the answer is? Move the transfer portal time to April after the tournament.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
And like I said, I'm for NIL. I'm for the transfer portal. I'm for all of these things. They just have to make some changes. I mean, look, in this case, though, it's just like, all right, he wanted more money and he wasn't worth it.
He's not. This is like any professional athlete where
that was it. I mean, look, Tennessee is probably going to be a worse team next year, but who knows? Tennessee often has like a whole revolving door of quarterbacks. Like I remember when Hendon Hooker got hurt a couple of years ago, and Joe Milton was the backup. And Joe Milton, I mean, he wasn't as good as Hooker was, but Joe Milton wasn't all that bad. So I don't know what other quarterbacks Tennessee has. There's a good chance that they're going to be fine.
No, I agree with you totally. I mean, he'll end up somewhere.
Last topic of the show.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about this. Will Stephen A. Smith run for president? And I did talk about this a little bit on the leftovers. He said, Stephen A. Smith said, hold on a second. I just want to make sure I get this correct. He said,
was it something to do with forcing the Democratic Party or something?
Well, he said, here's what he said. I have no choice but to consider running for president in 2028. First of all, you do. You could just not. Like, don't say I have no choice.
Wait, I'll tell you what your reason is. 100 million reasons not to run for president.
Yeah, the money. He says, hold on, I'm trying to look for the headline. He says,
he basically, if I remember correctly, said, "Oh well, the Democratic Party basically sucks, and I have to run to save the party." Essentially.
I do want, because I think there was a headline that I saw that said that he was. I'm just looking for it. He said he apparently was approached.
Yes. Here, Stephen A. Smith says he has no choice but to consider a run for president. I have no choice because I've had elected officials, and I'm not going to give their names, elected officials coming up to me. I've had folks who are pundits coming up to me. I've had folks that got a lot of money, billionaires and others that have talked to me about the exploratory committees and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. I've never had a desire to be a politician.
Yeah, well, honestly, this sounds, if he were to run for president, he would be very similar to Donald Trump. Somebody without a political background that kind of started talking about it and making a bit of headlines and then runs for president. The difference is, I think that when famous people, for reasons other than politics, say they're going to run for president, usually they don't do it. I mean, I remember a while ago, Clay Travis talked about running for Senate in Tennessee before he was as big as he is.
He would have gotten eaten alive.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he could have won. But the point is that he talked about how if one of them didn't end up running for re-election, that he would have run for office.
Well,
and he didn't end up doing it because his life was just too comfortable for him to want to do it. And I think that a lot of times when people say they're going to run for office, they don't end up doing it. And I think somebody like Stephen A. Smith likely fits that description also. Whereas I will say, though, if he did run for president, it would be such a gift to the networks because so many people who would otherwise not watch the debates would be tuning in. Like, I would watch every debate if Stephen A. Smith was in the debates.
Well, it would just be like First Take all over again because he's so used to...
It would be. And the truth is, Stephen A. Smith could have, and he's actually said this outright, he could have been a lawyer.
Oh, God.
But it's true. The way he argued, like he is very, very good at arguing.
There's a difference between an argument and a filibuster, though.
But the point is, but that's what lawyers do too.
No. I'm just saying, like, you could be a really good filibusterer, if that's a word.
But
And
like, how many sports fans who otherwise would not watch the debates would watch the debates just because Stephen A. Smith is doing it?
oh no, it's not even a question. By the way,
The same thing was true of Trump. Like Trump drew a lot of people to the debates who otherwise wouldn't have watched because he was so entertaining. And the same thing is true of Stephen A. Smith. He is entertaining. And the thing is, people say like, well, you don't have a background in politics. First of all, it doesn't matter because you have to understand they have people like in their teams that advise them on what to say in certain situations and what positions you should take. It's not a given that you have to have that background in order to run for office. You still can.
well, the thing that was funny also, the other quote, which I think you were referring to, was, here's the reality. People have walked up to me, including my own pastor, for crying out loud.
His own pastor.
Who has said to me, quote, you don't know what God has planned for you. At least show the respect to the people who believe in you, who respect you. Wait, who believe that you can make a difference in this country, to leave the door open for any possibilities, some to 3 years down the line. And that's what I've decided to do.
That is such a fucking scam.
Of course it's a scam. Duh. I mean,
I'm not saying he's necessarily lying about this. It just doesn't even sound believable that his pastor would come up to him talking about running for president just because he made a couple of headlines.
yeah. And it's funny, though, because Democrats were getting on him because, like, he was kind of like talking about Trump and how he was doing some things right on the right side of the lane, because we all know. But
here's the thing. Yeah, you're right. So here's the thing. I think that and this started maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, where I think that it's gotten to the point where like non-political people are more interesting than political people in general. And Stephen A. Smith is really, really good at being interesting. And
but is that good for politics, though?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes, I think it is in terms of, but that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is the fact that he says things that are interesting and somewhat unpredictable is why all of everything that he says, whether it's about sports or not, ends up making the news.
No, that's true.
Everything he says, whether it's about sports or not, just ends up making the news. And
now, the one last thing I'll say, though, is you don't think ESPN will desperately just like start airing his debates and shit and just like even though he can't be on air?
I don't know how that would work. I don't know. That's a good question.
No, they're going to make content out of it. ESPN is no dummy.
That's
even
true.
If he can't be on air, they're going to do everything in their power, knowing that he's going to be associated with ESPN behind the scenes, even when he can't be on air.
This is true. I guess this is true. So, yeah, I guess that's our show this week. On that note, so that's the show for this week. This is Moving the Goalpost. You can follow all Empty Bench shows at ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty Bench shows on. You can follow us across social media at MTGP ETB. Follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. Follow Nick Morgasen at Morgasen Radio. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. Listen to all Empty the Bench shows on ETBpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be back next week. See you guys.